geography of the area. I think the geology is pretty easy in terms of we know that there's a ton of frickin' volcanoes in that area. But the geography of the area is this village is right on the coastline, so it's at sea level for the most part. And as you move inland, the land rises up, and there's little valleys. So if you keep that in mind, we're going to keep going through some of this description, but that geography is what is important. Right above the village, just a couple miles up, is what is called the Autostrada A20. And it's a 4-lane motorway. It runs around the coast of Sicily. And at the time, 2004, it was brand new. They finished construction in 2004.
Huh.
The terrain in the area, like we were talking about, there's the valleys. It's kind of hilly. The engineers, civil engineers, love this. Well, I don't want to go over it. I'll just dig a tunnel. So they dug a tunnel. They dug a bunch of tunnels. And what they did is they would tunnel through the mountain. They would come to a valley. They would build a bridge to the next mountain. They'd bore a hole in that hill, come out. If it was decent flat land, they'd put the road on the ground, and then they'd do it again wherever they had to.
I want to go drive around Sicily on that road.
The A20 looks really cool. If you look at it in the satellite views, you can actually see the shadow of the bridge thrown across onto the shape of the valleys.
Super cool.
It's they're kind of that span arch bridge, the lower arch underneath, not on top. They're really neat looking.
Yeah.
But this is what they did. Well, the idea is that what happened is as they were digging those tunnels, they accidentally popped open a fissure or some kind of vein that was connected to a magma system or a volcanic system. Nothing major, because if they'd hit something major, we'd have known about it. Stuff had blowed up. And I say that in my best American accent. Stuff had blowed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would have been obvious. But instead, nothing happened, which means that they hit a crack or they hit a small leak. So this theory runs that there's a fissure in a tunnel, and it's not obvious, and it's leaking gas. So we're talking explosive gas, so not just carbon monoxide, but methane, things like that.
Are these things found in volcanoes?
I know two of the gases that would be flammable in a volcanic mixture would be methane and hydrogen sulfide.
Yeah.
I know those ones.
They would be.
What else is going to be in there?
Who knows?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah,
We're not geologists.
But aren't those kind of odoriferous?
No.
They're not
No,
stanky?
they're not. You got to remember is a lot of the gases that we use that could, like methane does put off kind of that sewer smell. Hydrogen sulfide does not.
Okay.
So we're used to a lot of gases having, this is a common misnomer. People are like, I would know if I had a gas leak, because it smells like rotten eggs. Well, when you're out in the woods, nobody's artificially put that rotten egg smell in it.
Well, yeah, that is true, because they do put that in methane.
Yeah.
I know, natural gas. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, those are the flammables. So though, as we were talking about again, I'm going back to the geography. If this crack is coming out of a tunnel, which is uphill, it's going to run down the valley, which this village sits in kind of the basin of a valley. So it would all run down, hit low spots, create little pockets of potentially explosive gas that if there's a spark, which, okay, my TV's on, it's got little sparks running around in it, or my computer's running, or my car ignition is on, but the car's not on, I can see how that could cause a fire. What it doesn't appropriately answer is the fires that are caught in things like furniture or electronics that aren't turned on.
Yeah, or a hairdryer that's not plugged in.
Or a hairdryer that's not plugged in.
It also doesn't account for hard drives being wiped and gates opening and closing on by themselves.
It does not.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. There is some discussion, at least one article that I came across was talking about the fact that if it is some kind of volcanic fissure that is leaking gas, it's probably going to be leaking volcanic ash at the same time in very small quantities. but that's going to drift down, and I've got to read this because that there is a bit of friction that is caused between the ash when two pieces of ash rub together or go across each other, which would create a static charge. So if enough of that builds up, it's going to create enough static charge that could potentially start a fire.
Seems like then you would be dealing with like random fireballs as well. It wouldn't necessarily always be things.
Well, plus I think people in the village would be noticing that there's ash all over everything.
Yeah.
You would think, but if it's in small amounts or it's ground into stuff, I can see how it's not noticeable. But Devin brings up a good point because that ties back into, remember the UFOs, the glowing balls over the ocean?
I guess that's true. I forgot about those.
It could be the old Men in Black explanation of swamp gas or a burning ball of gas floating over the horizon.
That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
Potentially.
So that's a bunch of their gas that's just gone out and got caught on fire.
Somehow caught on fire.
The fisherman lit a cigarette and so,
flicked it straight up 100 feet and caught a ball of fire up. Yeah.
The other thing about the thing about this theory that I'm not so sure about is that, like, besides the flammable ones like hydrogen sulfide and methane, there are a lot of other gases that are associated with volcanic leaks, and some of them are pretty caustic, and you would be smelling them.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that we haven't talked about a little bit, if we're going to go into this theory just a tad bit more, is there have been reports of people saying that as they were going through the tunnels around the village on the A20, and I want to say that the other road is it's like the A18 or it's an A-teen. I remember that. It's in the teens. Is that there are random events where a car will shut off. The electronics of the car die. Car goes to a stop. They start it back up. It starts, ignition fires, and then they drive away. And they don't know how much that happens, but people have reported that in that area.
And this is like inside the tunnels only?
I don't know if it's in the tunnels or if it's on the other road or if it's on the bridge. The reporting on it was very scant, but it could be that it's some of those more caustic other gases, which when a car sucks it in, instead of oxygen, is going to kill the ignition, in the cylinder. Gas cannot ignite if there is not oxygen, and it's some gas that doesn't burn right with it, then the car dies. But it rolls far enough forward to get out of that pocket of gas, so that when they go to turn it over, it sucks in air again.
So that's why the occupants of the car don't get asphyxiated then?
They're moving too quickly. Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's one of those things that I've heard or have read, so...
I think the explanation for that is these people just need to get their car worked on.
It's some auto body shop in the village or car repair shop in the village that's doing it.
Yeah,
that's probably what it is.
It could very well be. I know Devin likes this because we've used Nefarious a number of times, and this plays a little bit. So this is the
next theory here?
Well, we've got our next theory, and it plays a little bit into the volcanic bit, and then it goes on to the much more nefarious aspect. So this kind of ties the two together, is that when there are volcanic eruptions, there tend to be some electromagnetic issues that go on, because I don't understand why, because I'm not a volcanologist, as we've said, but it happens. Well, that is one reason people say that there's these electromagnetic issues. The other one is that some bad organization is targeting the town, and what they're doing is they're using a high-powered electromagnetic beam, shooting it at the village from somewhere most likely out to sea, which I gotta say sounds like a total evil supervillain move. And they're frying stuff in the town.
Yeah.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. This is actually, this works, because I would not be at all surprised if somebody, some supervillain, wasn't working on some sort of volcano lancing super laser that he could use to blackmail the world.
You're laughing, but this is like a serious theory.
Yes, a volcano lancing super laser that, and then he could just say, hey guys, if you don't want hot lava boiling down through your town, you better cough up like $1 million, man. Yeah, right now.
$1 million.
Yeah.
$1 billion.
Yeah. And so it might be that these are kind of beta versions. They're weaker beta versions. He still hasn't gotten all the way up to the superpowered one yet.
Or she.
Or she.
Possibly she. Yeah. Or it.
Yeah.
As in a organization, because there's a U.S. Air Force base right in that area, so of course the finger gets pointed at them.
Okay, good.
The finger gets pointed at the government, at aliens, or at a supervillain. The quote that I've got here talks about the fact that it would have to be a ultra high frequency beam, and it would have to be transmitted somewhere between 300 megahertz and 3 gigahertz.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Oh. And I mean, they have been monkeying around with EMP weapons, and so that's.
Well, we've talked about that. That's masers and every other kind of silly laser item like that.
Yeah. An EMP device wouldn't set things on fire.
I was going to say no.
It's
not meant to do that.
Yeah.
No.
Our next theory sadly could be one of the more plausible. And that it was a local boy/man.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And by boy/man, I mean a boy in 2004 isn't a teenage boy who is now a man. Because one of the Italian reports that I found was talking about the fact that the authorities believe they finally figured out what the problem was. And it was Giuseppe Pizzino. He's 26. And that means he'd been 15, 16 years old at the time. And they're saying he's the one who starts all the fires.
Yeah.
He was running around starting fires, kind of a pyromaniac situation, burning things.
That's not unheard of.
It's not unheard of, though. More unheard of is like breaking into a house to set a hairdryer on fire and then escaping before anybody noticed that you're in the house.
Well, the hairdryer, in my mind, is kind of suspect because whenever I walk into a room in my house and I find something on fire, I don't stop to take pictures of it. I grab the frickin' fire extinguisher. No, I haven't seen the picture.
It kind of just looks like there's a flashlight shining on it. To be honest, it does. It just looks like there's like a bright light.
And I am taking the photo at face value according to what is written about it. So you're right. It does look a little suspect. But here's what we're saying is that, remember I told you that when the feds came in, they had put up all these cameras, or when the government had come in.
And then the fire stopped when they evacuated.
Well, there evidently is some footage just at the beginning of that time. And one of those pieces of footage shows him by a car and doing something, almost the strike a match movement. If you were going to strike a match, a wooden match away from yourself, and he's in front of a car, and then it's obvious it's one of those cameras that does every 5 or 10 seconds, and then suddenly the car is smoky and billowy, and he's moved away, and then the fire department comes running around to it. It almost it's kind of comical to watch. It's almost like a Benny Hill skit, the way everybody runs around. But they run over, and you can see him standing there almost as if he's, on his phone going, I don't know what's going on or what happened over there. I question it because there were so many things, and I really don't know how one guy could have got into so many places unless nobody in that village ever locked their frickin' door.
Which is highly likely.
Yeah, besides which, you can't entirely rule out the possibility of copycats, too.
Well, but the thing is, what I don't understand, and maybe this is tacked on, is all the other weird... The computer drives wiped. Okay, I can see somebody goes in with a magnet and just wipes the drives. But what about car doors and weird electronic stuff, locks opening and closing, things like that?
Are we absolutely certain those things happen?
Exactly.
I'm saying is that I don't know that those aren't tacked onto the story. I can't say they're not. It seems like a lot, and it seems like there's, according to the article I was reading, he might not have done it all on his own, because his dad, at the time that he got in trouble, was head of the fund to compensate people for things that had caught on fire. So maybe his dad was helping him a little bit once he figured out he was doing it, and hey, help me keep my job kind of thing. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. I still think...
maybe Giuseppe is totally the one who did it all.
He probably is.
Well, Devin, judge, jury, right there.
Yeah, I think
Done.
he probably is.
I think it's entirely possible too that at least some of these things that caught fire, people just thought, "Hey, I want to get on the act. I want the guy from the National Enquirer to come by and interview me. So I'm going to light my toaster on fire."
Or
this
hairdryer doesn't work anymore. I'm going to light it on fire, and then the fund will replace it.
Yeah, there's that.
That could be.
I would do that.
You could intentionally overload something.
I would do that.
And then plug it back into the socket and say, "Look, it caught on fire right there. Oh my gosh, I need a new one."
Yep.
Yeah.
I know this is the crappy one, but I'd love the fancy super chrome Cuisinart version, please. I mean,
that's the version I bought when I bought it.
You just can't tell because it's so melted. Yeah. No, there's a lot of evidence of people pulling that kind of fraud off in the past to say that it's entirely plausible.
Mm-hmm. But as far as wiping your hard drive, I guess.
I don't see what the hell you'd get out of wiping your computer, because every time my computer dies, I am so angry even if I have it backed up.
Yeah, I know. But no, I mean, I always put a claim for compensation, like, that drive it was filled with cat videos.
You spent a whole lot of time.
It took me 5 years working, 20 hours a week to build up my collection of cat videos. They're all gone. I would like to be compensated for my time.
I have a feeling that might actually get thrown out.
Probably would, yeah. This reminds me, I've got to back up my cat videos.
I do have a couple of bits that I want to throw out. These are not specifically related to any theory, but they are explanations of some of the things that were going on. Do you remember I talked about the water pipes that suddenly, after all the fires, ironically, water pipes are bursting?
Yes.
There is a theory on how that might be happening, and that is through it's called I'll probably mispronounce it, cathodic process.
I think it's cathodic.
Cathodic, because it's a cathode. I think that's right. But basically what it is that you've got a water pipe, and it's welded together with some material, and somehow electronic charge is getting to the pipe, and that's going to corrode and weaken that seam. So that's what's causing that. So it's almost like there's an electrical leak in the ground that is weakening everybody's water pipes, because then it gets in the system, screws the whole thing up.
I must say that this village looks pretty old.
It does.
I think
it looks like it's been around a long time.
Yeah,
I'm going to give you that. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is Devin's favorite part.
The eggplants.
The eggplants.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the evil eggplants. Did a little bit of research on this, and I admit my ignorance right off the bat. I thought all eggplants were that weird dark purple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're not, apparently.
They are absolutely not. They are as varied as the rainbow. They come in a million colors, and most of them start out one color and then turn another. I also want to point out the fact that if this is a local farmer who is trying to save money, he may have gotten eggplant seeds from someone saying that they had quite the sloppy job and gave him a variety of eggplants. Because I've had this at our house, is that we'll say, "Oh, we're going to plant this," and you plant a bunch of seeds, and then the one oddball, you're like, what is that weird carrot? And it turns out not to be a carrot, but something utterly different. Yeah, an eggplant, which I'll never grow.
Well, it could have been actually also a little farmer playing a little prank on the press. I know this. I know that they're going to come out all colors, but these guys probably have only ever seen purple ones, so I'll bring them out to my farm and I'll point out my multicolored eggplants, and make a fool out of these
The one
guys.
thing that I've always seen in the articles, though, is they said the entire crop had to be destroyed because they couldn't sell it.
Well,
which sounds kind of bunkish to me.
Yeah.
Cross-pollination is also a thing. Like, when you go out in the summer and there's like this one bush that's got flowers on it that's like half one color and half another color. That's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that's as prevalent in eggplant, because it seemed like they were very linear in their process, but it completely could be.
But it's possible if he had one plant that was a different color that got cross-pollinated with a bunch of them. I don't know.
I personally think it was a seed mix-up.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking too.
I really think the guy was growing asparagus and didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And the guy probably might very well deliberately mixed up the seeds to produce different colors.
Yeah.
Because that would make your fields look a lot prettier if they're all rainbow colored and everything.
That's really all we've got on this little village.
So I'm going to vote for human agency.
I think UFO.
People did it.
Yeah?
No, I think aliens.
I'm inclined to go with the volcanic gas on mine. But, we never talked about, did we ever vote on the other ones? Oh, who cares?
No, it doesn't matter.
No. I think with mine, the Valley of the Headless Man, I think it was probably just unrelated.
I think it was Turok, Son of Stone.
Yeah, could have been that. Yeah.
I don't want to think about. We're just glossing over mine.
Okay. I'm totally okay with that.
Okay. Well, so concludes another episode of Thinking Sideways, the podcast. So,
Such gusto.
I know. Hey, you probably don't know where our website is, so we're going to tell you. It's thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. Actually, I'm sure you do know, but just in case you don't, you can leave comments. We'll have links out there for you. You can listen to the episodes. More likely, you're finding us on iTunes. So if you are getting us off of iTunes, please subscribe and leave us a review, preferably a 5-star review.
We like those.
Or a 6-star review. That would be even
that
better.
That is the new coveted ranking in iTunes.
Yeah.
It's the 6-star.
Yeah, exactly. You can also stream us, and there's tons of places to do that, and literally billions and billions of places. So,
Very does the
I won't
stars.
name any of them. We're on Facebook, just Thinking Sideways Facebook. Definitely, you can friend us and like us and leave comments. So we also have a group.
Yep.
Yeah. We're also on Twitter, Thinking Sideways. We dropped the G for that because we're so cool. And last of all, email. We get lots of emails, so if you'd like to send us an email with a suggestion or just tell us how much you love us, then you can find us. Our email is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And last of all, we are on Patreon now. If you haven't heard of Patreon, it's spelled Patreon, so that would be Patreon/Thinking Sideways. Patreon.com/Thinking Sideways, yeah. So if you don't know what Patreon is, well, you'll find out.
Yep, we've got stuff on there to explain it.
Yeah, we do. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully you're going to take our advice and stay the hell away from these places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Go vacation somewhere normal.
Yeah.
Much nicer.
No, actually, I think I'm going to, if I ever get the chance, I think I am going to go to Sicily and go to this little village. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I would. too.
Yeah.
I would
me
too. I
too.
just wouldn't stay there.
Yeah, the Valley of the Headless Man, not so much. No,
not doing it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's it then. See you all next week.
Bye, guys.
Later, everyone. Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by our secret identities. Instead, it's brought to you by Amazon's acclaimed crime series, Bosch. Bosch is back for a 3rd season. For Detective Harry Bosch, solving crimes isn't a job, it's an obsession that can claim your soul. After the long search for his mother's killer leads him to a police cover-up, Bosch now finds himself implicated in the death of a serial killer he's investigating. Starring Titus Welliver as Bosch and based on the best-selling novels by Michael Connelly, stream Season 3 now on Amazon Prime. This episode is also brought to you by Dark Matter. From the author of the Wayward Pines trilogy, Blake Crouch, comes a new sci-fi thriller called Dark Matter, which tells the story of Jason Dezen, a brilliant physicist who is abducted and knocked unconscious by a masked man. When Jason awakes, his life is radically different from the one he knew, and he's achieved something he's never even dreamed possible. But how did he get here? What happened to his old life? Jason's search for answers leads him on a strange journey and puts him in the crosshairs of a seemingly unbeatable foe. Pick up a copy of Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, now in paperback and available everywhere books are sold.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't get it.
Uproot the aliens.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
I don't know.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways, the podcast. I am Devin, your host this week and every other third week. Every other third week?
I don't think it's every other.
Every 3rd week.
Every third week. Anyway,
Because every other 3rd week would be 6 weeks.
these two doofuses are
Joe.
and
Steve.
hi. Hi. And this week we're going to talk about a mystery. It's a pretty interesting one.
Yeah.
And we're going a little off the rails.
We're going oogie boogie.
Going a little oogie boogie, and we're calling in a big ol' expert. So this week we're going to talk about the Pluckley Ghosts, which is also the haunted village of Pluckley, or however you want to talk about it.
Pluckley in Kent.
Pluckley in Kent, yes, in Kent in the UK. And this was a listener suggestion by a listener named Chris.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate that, buddy.
We're going to talk to you in a minute, actually. And I will say that
Is that what the thumping in the closet is, Joe? Did you tie him up? You're not supposed to tie up the guests anymore. We told you.
That's my ghost. Actually, I've been researching this one, and apparently my ghost here in my house, which my house is over 90 years old, I've got a ghost. And so I think my ghost is feeling a little jealous.
Yeah, it's not great.
No.
But I'll also say I had a little conversation with one of our mods on the mod team, and she said, I don't think you guys are going to do the Pluckley ghosts, but I would be even more in love with you if you did. And so to her, I say, you're welcome.
Hey,
Aha.
that makes me happy that she's going to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
You guys ready to
let's talk about Pluckley.
Talk about the Pluckley ghost.
There are reported to be, well, I guess a quick overview of the case, and then we'll talk about Pluckley, and then we'll get into everything else. This whole thing really started, there are about 18 individual entities.
Although, depending on where you go, some say 12.
Some say 16.
Some say 14. Yeah.
Some say 50.
Yeah.
I mean, it really varies, but there are up to 18 individual entities in Pluckley, as well as a mysterious mist and weird screaming in the nights in the forest. So that's kind of the mystery here, is what's causing all of this phenomena and if it's real or not. And we didn't really want to do this by ourselves. So since Chris suggested this, it turns out he is kind of an expert at this stuff. He's got a pretty good background in it. So
on this story,
he used to live
pretty close.
Yeah, and he even today actually lives kind of close to Pluckley.
And we trust his judgment.
Don't make us look like idiots.
Come on, Chris, come through.
So we're gonna let him introduce himself.
Okay. Well, I'm Christopher Ripley. I'm an architect and author. I live in Kent in the UK, but I work all over. And my background to this is that I used to live very nearby, and I went to high school in a town called Tenterden, which is very, very close to Pluckley. And being that I'm originally from Ashford, which is Pluckley's kind of on the way between Ashford and Tenterden, I've sort of travelled through it, visited it, drank in its pubs, and all sorts of things over the years. So I've been there hundreds of times.
If you couldn't tell, we talked to Chris by Skype, so apologies in advance for some of the quality of the interview.
But we talked to him for a while.
We talked to him for a really long time, got a lot of good stuff out of it. You're going to get to hear most of that, but I'm going to give you a quick little rundown before that happens. Pluckley is part of the Ashford district of Kent in England. Kent is like the southeast part of the country.
Yeah, by the channel. Between London and the channel.
Yep. If you don't know, I didn't know really. I don't know. I feel like I know a lot about the UK, and then I look it up, and I'm like, oh, I actually had no idea about any of that.
Oh, now you know.
Yeah. So Pluckley is a small village set up kind of along some lanes. I think
it's kind of scattered, actually, all over the place.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like a big old, almost wagon wheel type. It's not an actual wagon wheel, but it's like a bunch of different offshoot lanes. Yeah. That comprise it. And it's kind of just, I think you kind of think you're out of it, and then suddenly you're still in it, and it's just kind of a well-defined little village place.
If you go to Google Maps and Google Pluckley, you'll get this one corner of it. There's this one intersection where the Black Horse pub is and the main church. That's kind of like, and a few other things. But then there's this other part that's about 1.5 miles south where the railroad station is. But it's and there's a pub there and a railroad station, some houses and a few things like that. But it's like there's all this countryside in between, but they're kind of considered the same town, and it's so it's a little confusing.
Chris did mention that he even thought that Pluckley was kind of an ill-defined. It's kind of up to anybody's judgment where it starts and where it ends.
To quote Joe, is it a white spot in the road?
Kind of.
Well, it's actually several. Several, yeah.
Several white spots in the road.
Yeah, there's a triangle too, because over to the west of the Darrington Arms pub, there's yet another pub, the Blacksmith's Arms pub, which again, it took me a while to find because
you think it's over.
You think it's like this isn't in Pluckley. It's way outside, but no, there's still more Pluckley. Anyway. But
And
maybe that's what attracts all the ghosts to this place.
Maybe.
In fact, there are no city limits.
There's nothing keeping them in. Pluckley, for reference, has a population of just over 1,050 people total. Small.
Living.
Living.
Yeah.
And then the 18 dead. So.
Okay.
We're going to cut in and out of this interview that we did with Chris. Let's just go ahead and let him tell us what happened in Pluckley to kind of make it such a hotbed for
paranormal
activity.
Yeah, it is. It used to be in the Guinness Book of Records. I believe it's not in there anymore, but it was the most haunted place in the UK. But taking your first point about the history, it has such a long history for such a small place. It's quite weird, really. I mean, it's been a settlement since before the Romans, so there's been people living there in the main part of the village since then. From then on, it sort of became like a feudal system. So it had a family. It was originally the Archbishop of Canterbury, but then it became the Deering family, sort of inherited the village, and all of the houses, everything within the village, which was basically part of this family. And the Deering family, their sort of history starts, I think, sort of around the 11th century, and it sort of carries on all the way through to the 20th century, mid-20th century. And the Deering family themselves are kind of like these of their era. They were famous captains and lieutenants and members of parliament. So they were widely respected, they were widely known, and everybody in the village and everybody locally, sort of in the county of Kent and wider, would have been aware of the Deering family. And of course, being that they were such a large family, lots of rumours, lots of gossip. You know, this isn't a 21st century invention. You know, people talking about others, all these kind of rumours and legends and things that sort of sprouted up from sort of their families doing and whatever. And then after the family, there's been quite a number of sort of relatively sad and tragic events that have occurred, from obviously the World War II, and then sort of fires, suicides and all sorts of things. So a lot of that plays into the legend, I think, of the village. The village did have the plague years ago, and it suffered quite badly. A lot of people died from that. So there's that sort of ties into the local myth. There's been a number of sort of suicides and hangings and sort of death and disease over the years. There was the Luftwaffe dropped a bomb on Little Chart Church, which, although Little Chart was just outside the boundaries of Pluckley, it was still part of the Deering estate. So that happened in 1944. That was quite a tragic event. And then there was also a mill that burnt down within the village around a similar sort of time. So without getting into too many details, there has been a very long association with sort of tragic events, deaths, even possible murders, suicides. I know another interesting fact, which I'll explain a little later on. There is this kind of mist that appears, and locally it is known that there is a lot of car crashes that happen, just geographically because of the area. I know, working for a company years ago that had an arm that did deliveries, and it delivered in Pluckley, and about 2 or 3 times every year they would have a car crash there.
Okay, so we also asked Chris about this thing that happens when you Google Pluckley. There's a lot of talk about the Pluckley massacre, right? And I'm sure that if you've ever Googled Pluckley or done any research on it, you've seen this talk about this huge massacre that happened. And so we asked Chris, is there any validity to the massacre, or when did that happen, or anything like that? And this is what he had to say.
No.
Yeah.
No. That is a recent Facebook hoax.
And of course, it should be said that maybe there was a massacre, because massacres can